Hello and welcome to this episode. Today we're going to be looking at labour management and stress management. To do that, we're going to be using Dwarf Therapist an awful lot, so let's just have a look at Dwarf Therapist. When you open up Dwarf Therapist, if you find that this screen here is just grey, try clicking the connected button. That might connect you to your current game. If that doesn't work, close Dwarf Therapist, go to the starter pack, and then on the utilities tab, double click Dwarf Therapist and that'll open it for you. If you've had it open for a while and you want to see the latest information, then click read and that will update Dwarf Therapist with the latest information. We're going to use two features of Dwarf Therapist quite a lot. One is this box here. We're going to group by migration wave, and that's going to put the dwarves in the order in which they arrived. So as you can see, I have quite a lot of dwarves now, and the reason for this is it's easier for me to give you context about some of the things I'm talking about if I can show you a later stage in the game. So we've played on here for a couple of years so that we can see what some of the effects are, particularly on stress, and how you manage the large waves of migrants that come into your fortress. Another thing that we will do is we will group by nothing and then we'll order by happiness. So if we scoot up to the top, we've now got all of our happiest dwarves at the top, and Tammy here is ecstatic with a stress level of -50. That's excellent. It'd be nice if we get all of our dwarves there. And we have two quite unhappy dwarves. We've got Shrimp Sana here at a stress level of 16.5 and Ratsvats who has a stress level of 15. They are starting to get into worrying territory, but we'll talk about them a little bit later on. So let's talk about managing labour first. There are three main tactics for managing labour. There's micromanagement, there's easy management, and there's optimal management. Now, optimal management is quite a complex topic. Because it's quite advanced, we'll look at that in a later episode. What I'm going to cover here is some of the early game micromanagement that you need to do, and then how to quite quickly and easily manage the dwarves so that you get your jobs done and everybody has a job to do. It isn't the most optimal way to do it, but it's certainly a good way just to get to grips with how to manage your dwarves without it being overwhelming at the start. So in the early days of your fortress, you've got 7 dwarves and you'll have at least 14 jobs to do. So you'll need to do a fair amount of micromanagement. Each job has a priority to it, and some jobs are more important than others. So wood hauling takes priority over wood cutting, for example. So if we want to get our woodcutter to cut wood, we may have to take them off wood hauling. Fishing and plant gathering are two very high priority jobs, and they both take a lot of time. So if you want those dwarves to do something else, then you're going to have to switch those tasks on and off as your need requires. But then as the game progresses and you start getting more dwarves coming in, and you have to decide what you're going to do with those dwarves. Now, one thing to do is to look at what they're good at, what they already have skills in, and give them those skills. Allow them to do those jobs.
More migrants.
Right, I'm going to sort by migrant wave, and we'll read in the new migrants. So we've got 6 new migrants. First thing I do is to check that nobody is hunting and nobody is fishing, but because I set the default that dwarves start with no skills enabled, they're not going to automatically get onto anything. Now I am going to allow our fishermen to do a bit of fishing, and we have a level 10 mechanic will allow that. Our person with a bit of leatherworking skill the milking skill. Yes, we now have a brewer, so we'll take Bernie off brewing. We'll get him onto cooking. We have a couple of wood burners. We'll let them switch on, and farming. We'll allow the farmer to do the farming. Our plant gatherer will switch the plant gathering on, and the plant processor, yes, we'll allow them to use their skills. Pump operator and siege operator, I'm not worried about. And then the primary thing I want them to be doing at the moment is just hauling. And for your other dwarfs, or for the dwarves that have skills that are not particularly useful, I find one way to manage those dwarfs is just to give everybody in that migration wave a big batch of jobs to do. Okay, so I've named the dwarves and I've told them to all just go and help Tatina out. And everybody can do architecture.
There is a migrant.
You there, stop that singing. Yes, we know there are migrants.
We've just pulled in 23 new migrants. My word, that's a lot. So now we have our full list of migrants. And as you can see, we've allowed anyone who has a high skill in something, or even a bit of a skill in something, so if it's useful, then I've switched it on and allowed them to do that thing. But also, as I've required a particular skill, I have switched on a whole batch of people. So we needed to do a lot of stone detailing, so everybody got stone detailing. And it was always handy to have an architect at hand, so everybody got architecture switched on. But then at one point we needed furnace operating, so this particular batch of people weren't especially busy, so I turned them all on for furnace operating. And you can do that just by clicking on the header, and it'll switch them all to furnace operating. I needed some leather workers, so I just switched on those people. We needed some stone crafters, so I switched on these guys. And a good way to manage this, if you're trying to just batch manage it and you're not too worried about optimizing, you just want to make sure that all of the jobs that you need are covered, is to have a look and see just how many people don't have a job. And if you've got a fair number of people without a job and you need a job doing, then maybe they're the people to switch on. So say we needed shearing, well, we could just turn everybody into a shearer. Or maybe that's just too many people and we just turn half of them onto shearing. Maybe we could put the other half onto spinning. And that would be a very quick and easy way to set up your labours to make sure that all of your jobs are covered. Now let's talk about stress. Stress management is an extremely detailed subject, and the mechanics that underlie this are something that I'll go into in a later video. For now, for this video, we'll just look at some easy ways to help to manage your stress. So we have 3 goals. There are 3 things to make sure that your fortress lasts a long time. One is that your dwarves are secure, that they're safe. The second is that they can sustain themselves, they've got food and alcohol. And then the third one is that they're happy. Now this flashing down arrow here tells me that this dwarf is not happy, and this is Ratsfaz. Now we can have a look on the unit menu to tell us what's wrong with Ratsfaz. If we go to view unit and thoughts and preferences, we see lots and lots of dejecteds here, but that big wall of text, there's a far easier way to tell. We'll just leave it on Ratsfaz for a minute though. If we go to Dwarf Therapist and find Ratsfaz in here, there he is, and it splits it into what he's been unhappy about in the last week and in the last season. So in the last week he's been dejection at being caught in the rain, so he's really not happy about being outdoors. Dejection after being unable to pray for too long. So that's a big thing. We can sort that out. Self-pity after being unable to practice a craft for too long. Well, I've just switched on a load of crafting for him. And to deal with the rain issue, I've turned off all of his hauling as well. Dejection after being unable to acquire something for too long. Well, that actually requires hauling. It's when they're moving things to and from stockpiles or to and from the trade depot that they pick something up that they like. Self-pity after being away from family for too long, there's not much we can do about that. And self-pity after being away from friends for too long, well, that's something that we might be able to do something about by helping him make some new friends. But apart from giving him lots of crafts to do and switching off his hauling so that he's not out in the rain, what we can do is to make a temple that he can go pray in. Down here you can see a set of numbers and they tell you the happiness of your dwarves. So we have one ecstatic, we know that that's Tammy, and we have two that are not quite so happy. That's Shrimp Sana and Ratsfaz. So keep an eye on these numbers here. When you start to see one going yellow, that's when you need to start keeping an eye on what's going wrong. There are two particularly large causes of stress. One is seeing corpses and another is being out in the rain. So what about Shrimp Sana? What was it that made Shrimp Sana so unhappy? Well, let's just take a look at that. Houston, we have a problem. We have Shrimp Sana and a stray horse here and they're stuck in a tree. Now there is a step ladder there which Shrimp Sana should have used to get up and should be able to use to get down, but somehow that seems to have got confused. But the horse certainly can't climb down a step ladder, so the only way to get them down, well, we could build a ramp to get up and down there. Sometimes that's successful, sometimes it isn't. The surest way to make sure that someone can get down is to cut down the tree that they're in, so we're going to do that. So that horse is almost starving. You can see it's hungry. Shrimp Sana is tired. Now, when that tree's chopped down, there is a chance that they will get injured in the fall. But honestly, taking a tumble of one block is not terribly dangerous. And staying in the tree is very dangerous. There we go. Okay, Shrimp Sana, did you get any wounds? No, you didn't. You're fine. A Dwarf Therapist gives us a really useful overview into what's going on with our troops' happiness. But if we really want to see some details, it's worth going to the unit list. So if we have a look at, say, Ratsfaz, we can see an awful lot more than Dwarf Therapist was telling us. We can see that he's become quick to anger, which is a turnaround after being caught in the rain. So previously he wouldn't have been quick to anger, and this is something that's changed. We can see that he's become dejected by dwelling upon being caught in the rain. So being caught in the rain has really affected him quite severely. Now he's not just upset about being in the rain, he's actually having long-term memories about the trauma of being caught in the rain. So dealing with the fact that we do have to have outdoor tasks completed, it's worth looking for which of our dupes are best to do that. Now this is Shrimp Sana. And with Shrimp Sana, we can see something interesting going on here. So he doesn't care about nature one way or another, which is less extreme after being caught in the rain. So after being caught in the rain, which was when he was stuck in a tree, he's actually become more ambivalent towards nature. So we know that rain and nature are connected to each other. And this is Spotted Cow. Now, Spotted Cow personally has a deep respect for animals, plants, and the natural world. Now, that is an even stronger liking of nature. And that means that Spotted Cow is probably one of our best candidates for working outdoors. Now, he has been annoyed by being caught in the rain, but it doesn't seem to have affected him too badly. And what we can see here is a list of different types of emotions. So we have bored, lonely, euphoric, blissful, satisfied. And if we have a look at the wiki, we can find that each of these emotions has a different strength. So this is the wiki, and we're looking at emotions. And the way this works is that the closer to 1 each of these gets, with -1 being a positive trait and +1 being a negative trait, the stronger it is. So if somebody is feeling bliss, delight, joy, jubilation, love, lust, or rapture, then that's having a very strong effect at decreasing their stress levels. Whereas if they're feeling agony, anguish, despair, fear, horror, misery, panic, rage, shaken, shock, terror, or wrath, then that's having a very strong effect on increasing their stress. So Spotted Cow was getting a bit of annoyance, and annoyance is all the way down here. There it is. So it's having a very slight effect on his stress levels, whereas the fact that he is blissful dining in a legendary dining room is actually having quite a strong effect on reducing his stress. And what we need to do is make sure that we're getting a balance between the positive and negative emotions, and that nobody is getting such a strong and repeated amount of negative emotions that they're starting to dwell on them, that they're sinking into their long-term memory. I mean, Spotted Cow here is remembering good things. He's remembering being delighted. He's remembering being satisfied. And what we'll find when we're looking for people to work outdoors is that often the best people to work outdoors are either your first 7, because they are less bothered about the outdoors than some of your later dwarfs, or the most recent dwarfs who've joined you, because they haven't yet had time to become traumatized by the rain and the sun. Now, Flamebreaker here is an unusual one. Flamebreaker has been with us for a while, and he was caught in the rain, and he's been remembering being caught in the rain, but he's now accepting the fact that he remembers being caught in the rain. And mulling over that recurring memory has allowed him to rethink his intellectual values. And what that's done is he's now affronted by the whole notion of maintaining decorum, and finds so-called dignified people disgusting. So you can have an activity that somebody undertakes, or an event that they are involved in, can have some rather strange effects on them in the long run. Now, when it comes to handling corpses, we are looking for people who can handle stress. So there are 3 things in particular that are useful to look for. We're looking for somebody who's brave, we're looking for somebody who's calm, and somebody with good stress management. And this is Dwarf Comic, and Dwarf Comic here has got some interesting traits going on. He can handle stress. That means that dealing with corpses, and indeed fighting, so he'd be good in the military, dealing with corpses won't affect his stress as much, because nothing affects his stress as much. He's currently more fearless, so he's more brave than he has been in the past. So he's got 2 of the 3 characteristics that we would like to see. Now, one thing that we don't want to see is anxiety. Now, this is from the wiki, and this is personality traits. Anxiety can be seen on the dwarf's descriptive screens. What we're looking to avoid is these 3: a nervous wreck, always tense and jittery, and is often nervous. And ideally we would like one of these bottom 3 that have calm in them. Now, Dwarf Comic has none of these 6, so we know that he's neutral. Whereas can handle stress, which has a stress vulnerability, we know that that is a positive. Now, there is a theory that increasing the discipline of your dwarves helps to improve their resilience against viewing corpses and other causes of anxiety, other causes of stress. I haven't yet seen any evidence, any sources to prove that that's the case. However, it certainly wouldn't hurt, and it's quite easy to train discipline in any of your civilians by adding them to a military and setting them up with training. And that's something that we're going to cover in a later episode. But certainly one thing that you can do to help to reduce the stress levels of your colony as a whole is to be very careful about where you put your corpse stockpiles. You don't want to put corpse stockpiles somewhere where they're all going to walk past the corpses every day. Probably best to stick them round a corner or behind a wall where nobody except the people who are hauling the corpses are going to see them. The reason why we're particularly worried about stress is because if stress gets high enough, a dwarf can go insane. And that is especially dangerous if the dwarf goes berserk, because then they will attack and kill any animals or dwarves that they come across. Now, there is one thing that will stop a dwarf from going insane, and that is this here, if a dream is realised. So Potatina dreamt of crafting a masterwork and the dream was realised. So Potatina will never go insane. So she can become extremely stressed, but she will never tip over that edge. The only exception to that being is if she gets into a strange mood and she fails to complete the artifact. Now, a strange mood is certainly something that you're going to come across in your first year, and it is something that's going to very strongly affect their stress. If they complete their artifact, they'll be very happy. If they fail to complete their artifact, they will go insane. Let's have a quick look at troubleshooting a few things about strange moods. One of our miners has been taken by a stray mood. Jim. Now, Jim is going to claim a workshop, and he's going to want specific things to make at that workshop, specific materials to make his inspired creation out of. Now, we're following Jim, and Jim isn't going and claiming a workshop. And the reason why he's doing that is because we don't have the workshop he wants. Now, if we have a look at Jim, Jim is a miner. If we read that, we'll see that Jim's no longer available because Jim is in a strange mood. Now, mining counts as a form of stoneworking. So the type of workshop he wants is a stonemason. And we've just removed our stonemason, so we had better go and build him a stonemason pretty quickly. So I'm going to build a workshop, a mason's workshop, and let's just put it here. We'll make it out of chert. There's one nearby. There's loads of masons around. So someone should do that pretty fast. All right, let's go down and see what's going on with Jim. So we'll go units, zoom to Jim. We'll follow Jim and we'll see what he does. Now he's going there and he should go claim that workshop.
I claim this workshop in the name of invention!
Now we can click on the workshop and see what he wants. I must have rock. It looks like there's only rock he wants. Well, he'll go and get himself a bit of rock. And a bit more rock. Okay, so yeah, all Jim wanted was rock. Well, we'll leave Jim to create whatever it is he's creating. We'll have a look at that as soon as he's done it. Well, thanks, Jim. That's wonderful. Jim has created a chert millstone. He claims it as a family heirloom. Okay. It's not especially useful to us. It's probably not particularly valuable either. Well, not very valuable, but this is Jim now. And although he's spent almost his whole life as a miner and he's got very few other skills, he dreamed of creating a great work of art, and this dream was realised. So a great work of art counts as either an engraving or an artifact or a masterwork piece of craftsmanship. It's all the same thing. Well, that's it for this series. We've covered all of the things that you'll probably need to know for your first year in a fortress. I'm going to begin a new series now, which will look at some of the more advanced topics and the things that you're going to come across later on in the game. And we'll take into account some of the things that I've learnt from your comments too. So thank you for watching so far, and do keep an eye out for the next playlist if you're interested in seeing what we get up to next. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.